Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in. It's the morning after Halloween. I don't know how many of you stopped in last night for that horror show, but let's carry on. I've had far too much coffee and far too much candy. Let's get some saws fixed. We'll go down here and see there's some new stuff at the end. We have a hedge clipper for a pull start. I'm going to try to get to that today. A Husky 262. The guy got it for free, knows nothing about it. This is going to hit the bench very soon as well. I have a couple Stihl 201s. This one's missing a handle. This one won't start. An MS 170. This came in yesterday. Oh, it's here for just a bar and chain, I guess. A 291 that doesn't run properly. A 261 with the clutch blown apart. A 250 that needs a pull cord. Probably get that one today too. A 291. The tag says it's missing a bar nut. That can't be the only reason it's here. I've seen stranger things. An 036 that doesn't run properly. An Echo that won't start. Gonna try to get to this one today as well. Oh, this is interesting. A Stihl TS 360. Customer says it won't start and it's blowing fuel out the exhaust. Well, the one that everybody's been waiting for, the Stihl 036. Get on my workbench. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my workbench. It's early on a Friday morning here, the morning after Halloween. I'm so glad you're here. It gets lonely back here at this workbench sometimes. So today on the bench, we have this Stihl 036. We have walked by this chainsaw quite a few times over there. I know a lot of you have an interest in seeing this saw. Today, I'm going to try to clean up a few odds and ends over there. This saw, the Echo that won't start. There's a couple things over there for pull starts. If I can nail some of them off, that will clean up my line pretty good. So the customer who dropped this saw off said it's hard to start, and when it does start, it runs poorly. He also said that he's not interested in spending more than $75 on it because he found it in the scrapyard. I kind of get the feeling that he wants a new chainsaw. He mentioned buying a new Stihl MS 250, which is quite a bit smaller than the saw, but he said this saw is more than he needs. A replacement for an 036 right now would be a 362, which is over $1,000 Canadian. So I told him, to be honest, a $75 budget doesn't give me much room to do anything with this, but I will take a quick look and call him and let him know what I find, and then he can make the decision. So that's what we're going to do. So come along with me. Let's jump into this 036 and find out why somebody left it at the scrapyard. Well, let's get started here with this Stihl 036. Looks to be an ex-rental saw. It's got the rental sticker on it. And the rental tag. Which is being held on by a couple really sharp self-tappers. That looks safe. These rental saws often get ran like borrowed mules. This saw is likely from the early 90s. Could be a 91, 92 model. Not exactly sure. I see it's got the red lever. I don't know what that means. I've read so many rumors about these. Is it factory ported? 10 extra horsepower. Maybe it's supercharged. Maybe they just ran out of black plastic in the factory that day. I'm sure somebody in the comment section can tell me what that means. Saw looks a little bit twisted. Like something just doesn't line up there properly. Guide piece is missing. That chain is rusty. Rusty, crusty. Its rental numbers are all inscribed in it all over the place. Well, let's start like we always do. We'll have a look at the fuel. He says it will start, but it's very hard to start. There is not a drop of fuel in it. And it looks like the original fuel filter still in there. Okay, so there's nothing to dump out of there. There's just a drop of bar oil in the bottom there. I'll add some bar oil to this, and we'll put some fresh gas in it, and then we will see what's up. I'll put some fuel in the saw. Just got myself a brand new 5-liter no spill. I usually keep a 10-liter back here, but this will be a little bit easier to manage. I get asked quite a bit what oil we run here in the shop. So this is what we run for mix. We don't sell or use the Stihl Ultra. I hear lots in the comments about that stuff. I don't know if this is what you have in the States. Your stuff might be in orange bottles, made by Castrol. But we have good luck with this. All of our tree services, the electric company, which we call Hydro here, the roads departments, the towns, the guys who run their saws every day, we have no issues with. Most of our issues that we see come from the homeowners who use their saws occasionally. They own an MS 170. They fire it up, they cut a branch, they turn it back off. The saw never warms up. It never gets hot. I think that's, where a lot of that carbon deposit comes from. Might be just the saw never getting hot enough. I don't know, but my tree services who run these saws 7 days a week don't have the same problems. So anyways, that's what we use for oil here. So we'll go ahead and put some fresh mix in the saw. These little gas cans are incredible. Less spillage. Well, no spillage. So before I take this outside, I think we should pull that crusty bar and chain off. Like that chain is just seized in that position. That's just, I'm going to take this off and then we'll go outside. That's an old bar possibly the original bar. I believe that Oregon made this for Stihl here in Canada, and that would be going back in time a ways. So I guess we'll pop outside the door and see if this thing will fire up for us. I'll meet you outside. Something wrong. All right, we're back in here. So this saw, as you could see, definitely has a running issue. It's not getting enough fuel. So whether it has a carburetor issue, whether it has an air leak, it's hard to say just yet. Well, we'll start with basics and work our way through. We'll take that air filter off. That looks old and not in good condition at all. This is an air filter that should have been replaced long ago. We'll pull that spark plug out. There's the little winter summer shutter on this saw. We'll pull the top cover off to get that spark plug out. That's a Bosch spark plug. I'll grab my camera and we'll take a quick look down the hole. Look at this. There's the hole, the decompression valve hole. It's got a plug in it. But obviously no hole in the plastics for it. I wonder if this saw has been, maybe it was rebuilt. I have a brand new OEM cylinder for an 036. I should check and see if it has the decomp hole. I'll be right back. Sure does. So maybe this saw was rebuilt once. The piston and cylinder look fine in this. They are not the reason why this saw won't run. Let's do a quick pressure vac test of the engine, and then we'll be calling the customer before long to give him an update. I'll go ahead and throw the spark plug back in this. Okay, so our spark plug hole is plugged up. Our decompression plug is already in. I'll just make sure that's tight. That is tight. Let's go ahead and pull the muffler off of this. Let me grab my camera. So the piston has some light scoring on it, but both rings are free. That red silicone, that shouldn't be there. So that just confirms what we said a few minutes ago, that this saw has had work done to it. It's been rebuilt or something. Maybe a base gasket delete for more power. I'm going to do some digging into the serial number of this chainsaw and see if I can find out some information about it, like the day it was made, if it's ever had a warranty claim against it. Who knows what I could learn about it. Maybe where it was sold, when it was sold. If I find out anything before the end of this video, I will definitely let you guys know. So we've got our muffler off. I'm going to pull the carburetor off, and then we'll block our intake, block our exhaust port, and we will give this thing a quick pressure vac test and see what's up. I'll just dump that bit of fuel back out. See these marks all over my table? That's those stupid screws in the bottom of that handle. When the saw is sitting upright, the handle's actually sitting off the table. It's sitting on those screws. That's silly. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I actually want to do a compression test first. She's got lots of compression, almost 150 pounds. Look at this new light I just received today. I ordered this on Amazon. And it just plugs into my Makita battery. It's kind of neat, eh? So they've got little charging ports. Thought maybe if I did this, it would help me light up what I'm working on, but I don't know if that's better or worse. I'm going to leave that off for now. Okay, let's pull this carburetor off. I just checked the carburetor adjustments. The high speed is out 1 turn, which is correct, and the low speed is out about 1.25 turns. Okay, carburetor is off. Something that's worth noting when you take a carb off of something is just looking to see if it looks like it's never been touched. This one looks like it's had screwdrivers all over it. Let's block our intake off. This tool will block the intake and the impulse. Okay, we'll block off our exhaust. It's a good practice to have your piston at bottom dead center when you do a pressure vac test. This one is there now. So we'll go ahead and install this block, and then we'll get on with this test. So I just loosely put that on there. How's that? Does that look better? I'll try that. Let me know if that's too bright. So I've got that loosely on there, and I'll slip my rubber down in behind it. Right there. And then we will tighten this down. Sometimes that rubber wants to move around on you when you're tightening it. Got my pressure vac tool here. Bought this from Stihl. This does pressure and vacuum. We're going to pull vacuum first. I'm going to go to half a bar. And it will not hold vacuum. See that? So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that it's not one of my connections leaking. I'm going to move this over to pressure. And before we do anything else, I'm going to put pressure to the saw, and we're going to test my intake, spark plug, decompression, and exhaust connections to make sure that they're not leaking. And if they aren't, we will keep going here until we find the leak. So we are on pressure now. And it looks like we're holding pressure, no problem. So if any of my connections were leaking, this test would tell us. So no pressure leak. But we have a vacuum leak. So we are holding pressure without any issue there. let's ask the crystal ball. Crystal ball, do we have a leaking crank seal? I stole this from my kid's bedroom this morning. Don't count on it. Okay, crystal ball. So having a vacuum leak and not having a pressure leak can be an indicator of a crank seal leak. So that could be the problem, but there could be something else here. We know it's not our connections. So before I go any further, there's a couple things I like to do. One of them is, so in here, there is an intake boot. I like to wiggle the saw around a little bit, side to side, and see if I can, sometimes there can be a leak, but only when the saw is flexing a little bit. So I want to put you where you can see the gauge, but see what I'm doing too. So you can see that. I'm going to just jiggle the saw around a little bit. So tell me if we lose pressure at all. Is it holding steady or what's going on? I can't see it. Holy. Looks like we lost pressure. Let me try to redo that. All I was doing there was wiggling these back and forth. The intake boot is right there at my finger. That could be where our leak is coming from. I'm going to pump the pressure back up. Got soapy water here. I'm going to spray it on the intake boot and see if I can detect a leak. Try to bring you in here so you can see. So there's the intake boot. Okay, I've been digging around here looking for this leak. So where the intake boot goes into the cylinder, I'm going to put pressure to it. And we're going to watch for bubbles. Oh, you can see them right there. You see that? You can hear it. Listen. Okay, we found our leak. I'm going to zoom in here on the intake manifold. So right there, that plastic, or that rubber thing, that's the intake manifold. There's the clamp that holds it on. And there's the screw that keeps that clamp tight. I went and printed the page out of the service manual about this intake manifold. And that clamp is supposed to be positioned at the bottom. And whoever has installed this has it off to the side. And the other question is it tight? And it is not. Look at that. It's just loose. So it's in the wrong position and loose. What I'm going to do is push this down into position, and then I will tighten this properly, and we will retest and see if that resolves our vacuum leak. I can't tell if the intake boot is damaged or not, but we'll give this a try. This will be a quick and easy test that might be a quick solution. I've pushed it down into position there, and I will just tighten it up now. Okay, so that clamp is tightened. I think this was very loose. We'll go ahead and retest again. Now, there's always a possibility because that was loose. Like, that's where the intake meets the cylinder. There could be dirt in there. It's hard to say what's happened, but we've got it tightened back down. So let's go ahead and do a pressure test again, and then we'll wiggle this around and see if it still leaks here. So, still hooked up. I'm on pressure. Okay, so you can see that I'm putting pressure to the saw, and I'm going to wiggle it again, the cylinder. I'm wiggling that intake boot just like I was before. Doing anything? Nothing. So we solved that leak at the intake boot. So now I'm going to go back over to vacuum and see if we have resolved that problem. Hopefully, all it was a loose intake boot. Okay, so release that. We're on the vacuum setting. What do you think? Darn it anyways. It is possible for a chainsaw to have more than one issue, and we are seeing that here now. What I have here in front of me is an ex-rental saw that is slightly scored, still has the original fuel filter in it from probably 1991, signs of molestation, silicone where there shouldn't be silicone, a loose intake boot, a vacuum leak somewhere, probably a crank seal, that was probably never properly diagnosed before somebody rebuilt the saw. Picked from a scrapyard and owned now by a guy who wants to spend no more than $75 on it, which is probably about $60 US. He has no sentimental value in the saw. He actually just wants a smaller saw. Before I go any further, I'm going to give him a call right now, tell him where we're at, what I found, what I see, and we'll see what he says. I'll be right back. I'm back from a couple phone calls. I have spoke to Stihl about this saw, and with the serial number off of it, I wasn't able to learn very much. These older saws, if they weren't registered when they were purchased, then a lot of the information is gone. And this was purchased by a rental company to rent out. So there was only, I think he said, a 30-day warranty on this because it was a rental saw. So no registration, never been a warranty claim, and I can't get the date of manufacture or anything. All I know is that it's an early 036, probably from 1991 or 1992. He said the early models had this red lever. I asked him what that red lever signifies, and he said nothing other than that's what the color of plastics were in the factory at that time. So that's all I can give you about that. And then I talked to the owner of the saw. I explained everything to him that I just told you about what I found. And he said he really appreciates my time and the service I offer. He thought maybe if it was something simple like a carb adjustment, he would try using the saw, but he's not interested in going any further into it. He wants something smaller, anyways. He asked if I would accept this saw as payment for my time, and I accepted. I wouldn't do that with all saws. Some saws, honestly, are almost worthless to me, but this saw, I don't mind owning this saw. He said he watches my videos, he loves the channel, and he wants to see this video. So you're seeing it now. So this is my saw now. What should we do? If I don't find the vacuum leak in this saw right now, this will keep me up all night. So let's dig in further and find the leak. Just get that out of the way for now. I'm going to pull the recoil off of this. Okay, I just blew that area off. So we're going to test this crank seal for a leak. You can see that this is an OEM Stihl cylinder. I was wondering if it was. You can see silicone there and there that isn't supposed to be there. So I'm going to put some oil on that crank seal, and then I'm going to pull vacuum, and we're going to see what happens. Ready? Okay, so vacuum. So we are not holding vacuum, but I also don't think that crank seal is the problem. I don't see any movement, any bubbles. We're definitely not holding vacuum. I guess we got to keep going. Okay, well, let's get to the crank seal on the clutch side and see if that's where the problem is. That's worn out. That's pretty worn. See how loose everything is. Okay, here is my clutch side crank seal exposed. We'll put some oil on this one. Then I'll pull vacuum. see that? The oil being sucked in. See if I can get closer there for you. There you go. So we have a crank seal leak on the clutch side. So we have found two faults in the saw so far. We have found a leak at the intake boot, and we have found a leak at the crank seal on the clutch side. So why don't we do a quick little fuel system test, since we're already standing here and we're already this far into it, and see if we can find any more faults with the saw. That's probably the original fuel filter. We're going to test the function of the tank vent. So I have pulled the fuel filter off the fuel line, and we'll put the cap back on. So I've got my pressure vac tool here. I just put this fitting on it. I'm going to hook into the fuel line, and then we are going to test to see if the tank vent is functioning properly. Being the age of this saw and the design of this tank vent system, I don't imagine it's not working, but we'll test it anyways. So I'm going to pull vacuum. And I shouldn't be able to build vacuum. I can hear it working. Okay, so that test is a pass. I'm going to pull that fuel line out of there. So there's my fuel line. Probably the original fuel line. Being that the filter's that old, I imagine the line's that old. Just looking at it, visually looking for cracks and splits, and actually I don't really see any. So I'm going to test this fuel line to make sure it's not leaking. I'm going to put my fitting in one side. On the other side, I'm going to pinch tight, and I'm going to put pressure to it, and we're going to see if it holds. Okay, so I'll pinch that tight. Looks to me like that fuel line is fine, no leaks. There you go. So the fuel line is a pass, the tank vent's a pass. What's left here to examine? How about that carburetor? Let's look closer. In the last couple weeks, I have received 3 carburetor stands in the mail. I'm going to put names on them so that we can keep track of where they came from. And then when I use them, we'll know where they came from. So this green one is from Stihl. Thank you, Stihl. I have this one from the greasy shop rag that was sent from Scott. Thank you, Scott. And I have another one from the greasy shop rag from Joe. This is its first appearance. Thank you, Joe. This one hasn't been used yet. I'm going to take turns with them because they all want a turn. So let's use this one today. I have extra carb stands now that I can display my favorite carburetors on behind me. Okay, we'll open this up and take a look. Made in Hong Kong. We talked about this in a previous video. I did a video on an 034 and an 038. I think the 034 video we discussed why this says Hong Kong on it, if you're interested in that and want to see that. Wow, this carb stand sure makes my life easier and safer. So the screen is missing out of this carburetor. Somebody must have decided that it wasn't needed any longer. So let's move over to the other side. That diaphragm, I don't know, if you were going to fix the saw, you would clean this carb and rebuild it with new diaphragms. There is dirt all through this side. That screen in there is important. So another fault that we have found is the screen in the carburetor is missing, which allowed dirt in throughout the metering side of the carburetor. So we've just got compound problems here. The further we go, the more problems we're finding. Just a couple fun facts about this. If I wanted to buy myself a brand new carburetor for this chainsaw from Stihl, it would cost $167 Canadian. And there's quite a few parts for the 036 that are no longer available, and more parts becoming no longer available all the time. So these older saws, you have to be very careful what you do to them, because if you come across something that you need and you can't buy it anymore, it could shelf the saw, or you'd be looking for a used donor saw. I know that the muffler from Stihl is no longer available for this saw. The fuel tank's no longer available. I'm pretty sure this white brake, this plastic brake cover, is no longer available. And there could be lots of other stuff too. So yeah, these 034s, 036s, 038, all these older saws, you got to be very careful. You can get some stuff aftermarket. Some stuff's probably okay. Some stuff is not. I don't know about the fuel tanks. I've heard things about them not being great, not fitting properly, leaking. Anyways, I don't know. When I pulled the clutch off, the drum and the clutch, it's an oily mess. So I think that the crank seal was like the fuel mix coming through the crank seal. Yeah, it smells like gas. Okay, here we are with our Stihl 036 spread across the table. This saw came in and the customer said it's hard to start, it runs poorly, and he didn't want to spend more than $75 on it because he found it in a scrapyard. So we went through this saw to try to find its faults, and then midway through we gave him a call. You've seen how that went. So in the end, we have discovered that this is an ex-rental saw. It looks like it's been rebuilt at some point in its life. There is silicone in places there shouldn't be silicone. There is a decompression valve hole, but no decompression valve hole in this. So that's probably a replacement cylinder. We found the intake boot loose at the cylinder, causing a pressure leak when we jiggled the saw back and forth. We had a vacuum leak that we traced down to the crank seal on the clutch side. And then we went on to the carburetor, where we found the screen missing in the carb and, of course, dirt in the carb. So I'm no detective, but I'm going to take a guess that the saw has had a leaking crank seal for a long time, and it scored, and somebody rebuilt it without finding out why it scored. So rebuilding a chainsaw is pointless if you don't find out why the chainsaw needed a rebuild in the first place. That's just my best guess. So we're going to box this saw up, and I'll put it just out back here in case someday I want it. What should I do with it? Should I fix it? Should I keep it for parts? Let me know what you think. I have a whole line of chainsaws over there waiting for me. Some new ones came in today, including an MS462 that doesn't run correctly. I'm going to go make a cup of coffee and get on to the next chainsaw. Thank you so much for watching.